Most of our movement starts from the hips. This is our center of gravity. So it's really important to be able to move and get your body a little bit more mobile and able to move freely. We're gonna go over some beginning stretches that are quintessential to the meridian stretches, but are even more basic than that. So this is a set of 4 stretches. It's called the Makko Ho. So first one is this, which is known as the cobbler pose. What you want in all of these forward bending positions is you want to be hinging at the hips, not at your back. So if you're sitting here and your knees are up and your back's rounded like this and you're struggling to hold yourself up, you're going to want to elevate your hips. Generally, just always elevate your hips when you're doing these stretches, because if your hips are higher than your feet, and especially if they're higher than your knees, it's going to be a lot easier to hinge at your hips and to use your center of gravity and to use your body weight in order to apply the stretch. So I'm going to get on this pillow. I'm going to be on the front edge of it, right? Because if I'm too far back, it's not going to help me hinge forward. And the idea with this stretch is I'm going to want to have my back fairly straight. I'm going to want to get as much of a hinge as possible with my hips. And if this was of the meridian stretches, I would then let my back relax and drop. But if I don't first engage with the hip flexion, then I'm not going to get a full flexion out of the hips by the time everything else relaxes. Because if I round my back here, then already the compensation for the hip has been made and I can't really use the body weight the same way. So that's going to apply to the next 2 stretches as well. But the key here is just hinging at the hips. For the Makko Ho, we are fully focused on mobilizing the hips, so there is no aspect of letting the rest of the back relax. We'll get into the full sequence of the Makko Ho in a moment, but for now, let's look at the other stretches. The next one is straight forward. So I've got my legs straight forward. This is just our regular forward bending kind of stretch. And the important thing is to have my heels together in the meridian stretches, but in the Makko Ho, that's not really important. So whatever you want to do with your feet is fine. I like to keep my heels together. I keep my feet together all together and bring them back. And then again, we're wanting to hinge at the hips. If you're here and you're back like this and you're rounding your back already, just holding yourself up, trying to put enough weight to not fall back onto your back into a lying down position, that's where you're going to really want to use the pillow. But even for me here, even though I can hinge at the hips, I can get about this much flexion out of the hips. But when I sit on an elevated surface, I can get a lot more range out of that. So when we're doing the meridian stretches, we want to hinge the hips fully before we let the rest of the body relax into it. It's really important if you're really going to get everything out of it from the hips. And if you're not having this movement start from the hips, then it's not the meridian stretches. It's not really recruiting that far up. So the next stretch is having the legs open. So this is your kind of split stretch position. And it's not really super important how wide your feet are. What I would suggest is how wide can you open your legs without forcing it. That would be the ideal position here. And then I'm really just hinging forward again at the hips. And once again, if I hinge forward and I'm not sitting on an elevated surface, I can get about that far. But if I've got something under me, I can get a lot more out of that hinge. And if this is the meridian stretch, we're actually going sideways for this one. But in the Makko Ho, we're just going straight forward. There is a meridian stretch, an advanced meridian stretch for the heart meridian. That is actually like this. And that involves no rounding of the back, so just flexion of the hips. But for the Makko Ho, we're just going to be hinging forward. So if you're really uncomfortable with your knees open, a variation is to do it with one leg at a time, like this. So keep that in mind. And the last one is probably the most challenging for people. This is like Seiza times 100. So I'm sitting in Seiza, but the key here is so proper Seiza means my butt is in the bowl of my instep of my foot. right? So it's in between my foot. My heels are kind of out to the side. With the meridian stretch, I want to have my feet way out to the side so my butt can reach the ground basically. So my feet are further out to the side than if I was sitting in regular Seiza. All right, and there's a few variations for this one. The full version is basically lying back, and you can bring your arms up overhead. If it's the meridian stretches, you're keeping your knees close together and your fingers are interlaced overhead. But if it's this one, your arms can be really wherever you want, and your knees can be open a little bit, and you're really just trying to relax. You'll feel your lower back resisting the relaxation, and you just want to tune into that spot and try and let it go. So that's one variation. What I would suggest, if you're almost comfortable there but not quite, getting one or more pillows behind your shoulders is going to help to make it a little less. And getting one behind your back might be helpful as well. But what I would suggest is, if this is something that's really uncomfortable for you, you can do it one leg at a time. So for one leg at a time, I'm just sitting on my side. I'm bringing my leg behind me. And then I can either just sit on my side like this, or I can roll onto my back. And if even this is too much for you, just as high as you can get your leg. If you can't actually get your leg that high, you can wrap something around your ankle if you can't reach. And then just pull it up, plant it down, and stay on your side. You really just want to open that up. So if you're doing that, staying on your side, with your foot just barely back there, what you're going to want to do is think about thrusting your hip, this hip, the top hip, forward, so that you're creating a straighter line here. So that's probably the trickiest stretch, but if you're comfortable laying down into it, that's perfect. If you're not ready for that yet, just do whatever you can. You don't even have to, if lying down altogether is really uncomfortable, you can start doing it like this. You're just pressing your hips up. You can get back onto your elbows. Again, pressing the hips up, and use that to kind of work your way down. Same thing with one leg at a time. If you're doing it this way, you can start on your hands, press to the side. You can work your way down to your elbow, and then eventually over time, as you practice on a daily basis, eventually you can get all the way down and then stretch them out one at a time. So try each one of those and figure out which one of those variations is the one you want to do. And then while we're going through the Makko Ho, you can pick which variation is right for you. So let's work through them. That was the order of them. A little quick breakdown. I'm actually going to do them all except the last one with a pillow. This first one, I'm bringing my feet together. My knees are out to the side. I'm thinking about pressing my knees down and hinging my hips forward. I'm not grabbing my feet to pull into it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to move with our breath. So as I exhale, I go into the stretch. And as I inhale, I come out of the stretch. So take a deep breath in. As you exhale, hinge at your hips. Get forward as far as you can without your back bending. And then breathe in. And come back up. So we'll do that 8 times. Exhaling into it. And then inhaling on the way back up. Make sure your back isn't rounding. You're just hinging at the hips. It might not be a very big movement. It might only be this far. Don't try to get farther by rounding your back. So we're really focusing on the breathing here. Next, we're going to bring our feet out in front of us. And again, just hinging at the hips and following our breathing. So taking a breath in, exhale, hinging at the hips as far as you can without rounding your back. You can inhale first and let your breath start to move you. If I just start breathing in, my belly kind of starts pushing me up out of the stretch. As I start to move, exhaling creates more space for this stretch to happen. Just focusing on the breath. I put my hands on my kneecaps so I can feel if I'm flexing my quads while I'm doing this. They should stay relaxed. But I'll feel my kneecaps tighten up if my quads start to get involved. Make sure you straighten all the way up as you finish your inhalation. Okay, and then next we're going to bring our knees apart, opening out, and this one again hinging at the hips and leaning forward, just using the hips. When I say hinging at the hips, I mean the ball and socket joint, not the hip and lower back joint. So back stays straight. This might be a really small movement. This one and the last one especially. So try to stay aware of whether you're actually rounding your back or looking down to compensate. And just focus on hinging at the hips, keeping the back or spine neutral, and moving with your breath. Okay, and the last one we'll do is in Seiza, leaning back. So any one of those variations we touched on, whichever one is the most comfortable for you. I'm just gonna have my pillow right behind my shoulders. And you're really just gonna try and relax as much as you can here. So this is the only one that we're really passively stretching. Try and feel where most of your tension is. For me, it's right between my lower back and hips. So I'm really just trying to consciously relax those muscles. You're going to hold this stretch for about a minute. Really just focusing on relaxing with my exhalation. Trying to consciously tune in to those areas where I feel the most tension and override those resistance responses. This is really about bringing your eyes into your body. And on the next exhalation, you can slowly come out of the stretch. And that's the Makko Ho. Those are the basic stretches. I would suggest if you're trying to ease your way into the meridian stretches, this would be a great place to start. It only takes about 5 minutes to go through the whole routine, and if you do it every day, you'll start to really notice an improvement in your hip mobility. Try doing it for like 21 days, 3 weeks, and I guarantee you'll notice some difference. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.